First of all, to be really clear, that's the book, and I'm not going to talk about that, which will please a number of you who've heard me talk about it too much recently. Second piece of good news for members of the audience, Helga, who was in Oslo on Tuesday hearing me talk. There's going to be no Mexican waves and no silly games from me. That comes a bit later in the morning from Johnny and James. What I do want to talk about today, though, is not going to be preaching to the choir, I hope, because I guess most of the people here are really into good ideas and new stuff, right? And some of you are making new ideas and good ideas and selling them to organisations or to people out in the real world. It's not the case, to be honest, outside. And so rather than tell you why good ideas are important, what I thought would be good to stand side by side with you and tell the people who really need the ideas that people like you are interested in, engaged with and in creating, why they're important, to give ourselves a sort of a manifesto, if you like, a start at it anyway. Let me tell you why, personally, I think this is important right now. I spent one of the worst weekends of my life, the weekend before last, in Cannes. Now, you think that sounds like a bad thing. It was paid for by somebody. It was terrible. It was with the music industry at Medemnet. It was a truly awful, soul-destroying experience. Awful, awful, awful. Awful, 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 awful. And for someone who's an obsessive music geek, it was made even worse by the kind of conversations that I found myself involved in. I'll give you some of the tags that would describe that conversation. Just impressionistic, verbal cloud of the tags there. 1, asset. 2, rights. 3, owner. 4, extract. 5, exploit. Enforce. Assets, rights, money, cash. Pirate. Well, I thought that's quite good, pirate. Pirate sounds like a good word, doesn't it, right? Steve Jobs and his thing about, more fun to sail with the pirates than it is with the Navy. Who wants to be in the Navy when you could be a pirate? That's great. But the music industry is just now, the majority of people who work in it are just full of money, assets, rights. And Duncan at the back's going, yeah, absolutely. That's what it's like. But it's not just the music industry. Much of the advertising industry is the same. I was talking to Matt, just sitting outside this morning, Matt Hardestry, about how many agencies, the management agencies, are concerned with what? Money. Not with ideas, not with making stuff happen, not with creating things of value, not changing anything, but just working out the money. And it's natural, it's human in some ways, because their world is one of legacy business. They've got to manage out what they've got and keep, in these difficult times now, keep the money coming through. That doesn't make it right. And yet there's people like us who are interested in new stuff, doing really interesting things, struggling to get them to really pay attention. And whilst it's nice to gather together and exchange stuff and celebrate these new ideas, maybe we need something more. So I started thinking about the perspective that they might have. And the conversations I've had recently make it really clear that they view people like us as people with some kind of problem. People who've got a disease like this, who've got some kind of psychological maladjustment, a love of enthusiasm of what is new or novel, at the expense of doing the sensible things in business today, which are managing your costs, keeping your top line going, and reporting clearly and consistently to your shareholders. That's what matters, isn't it? And I think it's worth laying their case out a bit further, because in some ways they're right. Most new ideas don't work. It's just the law of the world. As Paul Ormrod's book, if you stuck with a rainy afternoon, have a flick through this. This is fantastic expression from about 5 years ago of why systems mean that system thinking means that most things will not succeed, however good they are. Partly, and this is what senior managers say, ingrained habits that are embedded in culture don't really change. This is 40 years of charitable donations data from the US. Right, and there's a bit of noise down the bottom here. You'll see things that people are giving to, the environment, foreign affairs, those things are growing. And over the longer term, public and society is growing, but this is actually a log scale, so it sort of distorts how close those things are together. At the top, the one you can't see, the one that doesn't change, the thing that Americans still give by far and away most of their charitable donations to is religion, religious foundations. Don't change. That's because it's embedded in that society. Now, wherever you look, the kind of habits that we're looking to disrupt are embedded in culture to a greater or lesser extent. To bring about lasting change to our new ideas, it's really hard. So you can see that the naysayers have something to say for themselves. And indeed, popularity is a fickle thing. This is just an illustrative chunk of popularity over time. It's a search engine popularity ranking of, I think, the top 10 or something. And it just shows you how things go up and down. If you want to know why that is, you could perhaps have a conversation with me later and I can bore you about copying. I've already bored somebody this morning about copying, so let's not do that to the rest of you. But that's true as well, right? It's really hard, whether you're in the music industry or whether you're doing stuff for consumer products. It's really hard to predict in advance what's going to happen. And it's really hard in most large organisations, whether you're in the private sector or the public sector or in the third space, to bring about even the smallest change. 123 years it took Heinz to make the ketchup bottle label the right way up, right? Turn the bottle upside down, that's the wrong. And you need to store it that way in order to get the ketchup out because it's too thick. 123 years it took to put the bottle with the cap on the bottom and the label facing this way, you can store it that way. 123 years. Really simple thing. And I know, because I've worked with Heinz extensively, how many times they've had that conversation and thought it was a good idea and yet didn't do it. So good ideas, really, really hard. And here's something I heard from an innovation guru recently, which I thought was great, which is, from a corporate point of view, given how hard it is to change people's behaviour, given how unpredictable it is which idea is going to be successful, innovation is a great way to turn my money or my shareholders' money into air or smoke. So you can see why, you know, all those concept testing research methodologies which in ad land are really worrying and concerning. Their main job is not to find the winner. Their main job is to kill the things which are going to waste the organisation's time and money. It's a huge industry in there, and many of the people who sell those services are actually very honest about that. So, given all of that, I thought it would be interesting for us to develop this agenda about why these ideas are important, that we could all perhaps start sharing, and it's just a starter. It's not the answer, but it's just a starter. It's just 5 things. I can't do 10 things because I can't count that far. My memory's failing. So just 5 things that we might use to argue why engaging with the kind of things that we all are here to celebrate today and explore, in the way that PSFK reports on them as tangible things in the world, not just as interesting intellectual ideas. And I asked the folks who read my blog for their suggestions, and in fact I offered the book that you kindly sent me as a prize. And the most popular suggestions on the blog were these. Talking and engaging with good ideas makes you popular, sexy, and even just at the lowest level interesting. Because good ideas are like social objects. They give you something to interact with other people around. Doesn't seem to me to be a great answer to the question, so I went a bit further. And the first thing, and this is really important, this is from remember, speaking to large organisations, why you should engage with this stuff actively. And the first reason, I think, is something that my mate John Dodd suggested, and that is new ideas help us test our old ideas. We're never going to be perfect. The old ideas are never going to last forever. Whether they're conceptual ideas about how the world works, or whether they're designs of our products or the way we deliver our services, new ideas constantly challenge us, and engaging with them allows us to do that. You see, in most large organisations, where it's like a walled garden, we teach people in large organisations not to be inventive. We habituate them to not think, to act literally in the concerns, the process of the organisation. That's why large organisations in particular are keen on their processes, and new ideas are like breaking a hole in the wall. A really good example of this the other night I saw, that I'm sure some other folk here attended the night at Nesta on peer-to-peer banking. right? I thought it was really interesting. And the guys from Zopa, which is a peer-to-peer lending and borrowing banking service, met up with the guy who's the head of innovation. I think that's right, Johnny? The head of innovation at Lloyds Group, which is the largest banking group in the UK. Now, it was clear there were two universes colliding in a really weird way, right, at this thing. Because the guy from Lloyds, his big concern was, would peer-to-peer lending take over the majority share of UK retail banking? That was, that was his concern. He had something to lose. Would my market be changed by this simple mechanic or not? Whereas the guys from Zopa were going, well, it's not, we don't see the world in the same way. We just think it's kind of interesting and people seem to like it, and we think it's going to grow because it gives people something different. And at the heart, and I'm not sure yet whether the Lloyds guy really took this learning on board, but the heart was the Lloyds guy saw banking as about money. Only about money. Only about money. Money you lend, money you borrow, the spread you make, and and the mechanics of peer-to-peer were different from the borrowing in the markets or from reserves. The Zopa guys created something which got people to see money as more than money. Money as an experience. Now that sounds really crass, but money as something that is more, something is social between you and me. Money is entertainment in an interesting way. Now, not they're entirely right, but it was a really interesting challenge. And if I was the Lloyds guy and listening really carefully, I'd go, that's really scary. It's not the mechanic. It's someone who sees the world that I deal with fundamentally different from how I do, and to take it on, and then maybe he wouldn't change his view, but he'd say, I know what I'm up against now. At least I can respond to that. So that's the first thing, I guess, which is testing your ideas. The second reason why organisations like the Lloyds guy, that kind of organisation, need to take this stuff on is it helps them explore the future, helps them get a glimpse into the future. Now, it's not just that Zopa will take over the world or peer-to-peer lending is going to take over the world. Not at all. I suspect it won't. But it might be part of the future, and to see that scenario at least is really useful. A lot of the technologies around at the moment are really interesting and easy to play with, and I think this is the area that too many large organisations fail to do with. It's a brilliant thing. Nicole Yershin from Ogilvy here today runs this brilliant thing called the Ogilvy Labs, digital labs, where it helped them and particularly their clients experience this world and play with it rather than just hear about it. To play with it, I think it's really important. And Dan Thornton made the point on my blog about this playing with stuff, playing with these new technologies, see what you can make of them. Alfie does this brilliant thing, and I'm sure some of you have come across this at least. This is using geotagging. Rather than, I've known about geotagging for ages, but to play with this and participate in this world changes my experience and my view of what the future might hold using this stuff. This is a brilliant organisation. If you don't know it, it's a community that Alfie's tried to gather together to identify and fix all the public clocks in Britain. Neat. And this is something that Russell's blogged about recently, which I think is another great example. This is where we talk a lot about how the new technology is allowing people to interact with each other in new ways. He makes the point that people and things are interacting in new ways with the new technology. So this is a Marjorie Allingham book, I think, Cloak of Eagles, and he stuck RFID tags on here, which will, when you scan them, will then link back to suggested listening tracks. The soundtrack you should have to listen to this music. It's really great. So again, you won't know about what the future's like unless you play and participate. And I think that is the way that these kind of ideas and engaging these ideas really helps large organisations. But at a simpler level, given that most new products fail, between 90 and 99%, depending which numbers you look at, of new products fail within the first year in the UK, and there are lots of reasons why that might be, it's engaging with these kind of ideas, I think, for large organisations, public or private sector, again, gives them NPD hacks. Really simple things that you can do. And here's, oh, we won't be able to see that then. Never mind.
Apologies.
No. Here's a simple example. In 1903, a good Quaker matron, Elizabeth Phillips, invented a game which was supposed to teach young Americans about the evils of property ownership and being an evil landlord. And it worked quite well for a while. There's her in the middle, lovely lady. In 1934, an unemployed plumber, Charles Darrow, picked up the game, started making handmade versions of it himself, slightly adjusted to be more interesting and engaging, and rather less serious and Quaker-like. And he started selling it to FAO Schwartz and a number of other folk, and so it took off. And then, of course, he sold it the next year to the Parker Brothers, and it came over here, licensed through Waddington, Basically, everything that's out there is a hack, potentially, depending which way you look at it. You can see things that other people are doing, new ideas and ways of solving problems. And there's one really simple way of thinking about this, not just in your own market, ways other people do it, which is the way that terrible benchmarking idea that McKinsey and Co. encouraged corporations to do. So benchmark what other people are doing so you can copy it. But in the way that Adam Morgan calls this Shragering. So his picture of Studio 54, taking ideas from other markets and going, hey, that's a really neat way of solving that kind of problem, a really neat audience that I hadn't seen before, or a really neat use of technology that I haven't done before. Why don't we use that to solve our problem over here, completely unrelated market? So if you see new ideas, you're constantly swirling, you're constantly getting hacks presented to you if you look properly. And I promised not to talk about my book, and I know Johnny and James will be talking a bit later on, but this is our friend Rob Poynton's book. It's called Everything's an Offer, and it's basically a guide to life on the principles of improv theatre. It's brilliant, and it encourages you to notice more, notice everything around you, and ask yourself, what's the offer in this for the problem? And I think rather than just having information about, it's the ultimate proof, information about new ideas, large organisations benefit greatly from their people engaging with them in this kind of way. And I'll talk a bit about why in a moment, why specifically that. One of the biggest problems we know from NPD and innovation is not the working out what a good idea is. We've all sat there and gone, I thought about that months ago. Or I remember recommending that to a client. There's one old employer of mine I know is currently considering a mobile marketing strategy, just like the ones that we discussed in 2004 and 2005 and 2006. Okay, it's not difficult to work out what a good answer would be. To get it done is something else. And I think, engaging with stuff, engaging with new ideas all of the time allows you to go a bit faster. There's a particular mechanism behind this which is called memories of the future, which some of you may have heard of. I used to work with, in fact I used to live with a beautiful art director, and I could never understand how she would know which shot was the shot. Which shot was the shot? Which is the one? Which is the one? Of all the shots on the contact sheet, which is the one that we've got to go for? And you go, that one. How? How is that? How do you do that? She says, well, it just feels familiar. Feels really familiar. And apparently this is quite a common thing amongst both entrepreneurs and creative types, and it allows them to act, identify and embrace opportunities much quicker than the rest of us do. And it's a guy called David Ingvar, who's a Swedish neuroscience professor. You see, I managed to get some neuroscience in today, after all, who had this idea, and he's got some evidence, it's not conclusive, some evidence that there's a different kind of brain activity goes on in creative people and entrepreneurial types, which corresponds with a constant scanning of the world and creating alternatives. Creating what he calls memories of the future, so that when you see something you've already kind of half considered before, it feels familiar and you can act on it, you're not already processing it. Now you only get that if you're constantly doing it. So for each of us and for the organisations that we're trying to share our ideas with, I think that's a really good thing to do every day, because it will help them embrace the ideas, rather than seeing it as like, you know, that bit they go, okay, so now for the innovation programme, or the innovation types from the outside, it needs to be across the piece. And my last reason why large organisations need to do this is a really dull, and I hate to do this within these beautiful right-on halls, is a really dull financial argument. And I've stolen this chart badly using Grab It from McKinsey report. So it doesn't display there quite so easily. Let me just I can just explain it to you quite quickly. So let's start at this end over here. 100 years ago, about 10% of the economy was in service stuff. 90% was in service stuff. I'll do it again. Service stuff, 10% over here, 100 years ago. 90% was over here. That's right, in things like extraction businesses and processing businesses, digging stuff out the ground and making stuff with the stuff you dug out the ground. And this is the people interacting with each other. McKinsey say that it's now reversed. So between 80 and 90% of the economy is in this end, people interacting with each other. This chart shows, and I have to go really close and do pointy bits, this end here. This is an example of businesses in industries that are extraction businesses, and it shows the range of financial efficiencies that they've observed. So these businesses are grouped really close together. This is thousands of industries they've looked at, a business that they looked at in this way. These grouped really close together, so there's a very small range of efficiencies in extraction businesses, slightly more when you get to processing businesses. But the businesses which dominate today's economy, people businesses, where people interacting with each other is the crucial thing, has a huge range. In fact, it's 10 times that which we see in extraction businesses. So if you wanted to make people more engaged with stuff, enjoy their job more even, well, they've got one, which is what you need to do at this end, interested in new ideas, excited by stuff, rather than just pawns of a machine, then you might actually do something to improve the financial performance of your business, which would be a good thing. And everyone's looking for the improvement of the financial performance of their business. So that's my 5 reasons why we need to encourage these large organisations to look at these things. And so perhaps if you're from one of those organisations and sitting here today, you might consider, as we look at each of the ideas that are discussed today and why you think they might be important, these are the kind of questions we might get people to ask. First, what does this challenge? What's this idea challenging the ideas that I've got about the world or about my business? How can I explore this? How can I participate? Can I play with this any further? What's the offer in this thought here for me now? Not are they right or wrong, but what's the offer? What can I take from this? What can I play with? Where does this suggest, these kind of things suggest that things are going? Predicting the future is part of it, but more importantly, what can I do now? Right now. What I must say absolutely can't wait to do next? And how might engaging with this make people's jobs more interesting? Because I think that's the real bottom line and the hard financial argument at the end of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak, Piers, and have a really good day, everyone.